Let's see. We left Charleston at 4:30 in the morning. We got to watch the sunrise from the air. If you don't know, that's really early to be awake and to be in an airport because things don't always go as planned. Jalen, Eli, J. Poe, Kevin, and I, 5 of us almost didn't make it on the plane because they didn't have our connecting flight from D.C. to Ethiopia. They only had us going to D.C., and so we sat there, and we were the last people on the plane as we ran through security, and we had to wait on Jalen because they took her peanut butter away, and she was not happy because that was her food for the week. But if you can read, that says 7,390 miles. That's a long way. There's our little airplane. This was on our little TV screen in front of our seats. Got to ride on a 787 Dreamliner.
Cool.
Nice plane. Real good for naps.
The batteries were okay?
Yeah, the batteries were fine. This is the first awkward picture of our group getting off the plane. None of us are really sure what's happening. I'm going to point somebody out to you guys, this man right here. Please, his name is Julian. Remember what he looks like because he's important later. He plays a really big part in one of my favorite stories. But just remember how big and not big at the same time he is. We had to stand in line for our visas before we could enter into the country. Standing is a word I don't know if I can use because we actually laid down and took a nap because it took 2 hours to get through a tiny line to get our visas. So we sat in the airport for a lot longer than we planned on. There's the rest of the group who decided to lay down. Now, I know these pictures are really dark, and if you want to see them in their better light, if you could come ask me later, and I have them on my computer, and they look much better than they do on the screen. This man and those two, we're in our cars driving through Addis, the capital city in Ethiopia. And driving is an operative word. Driving is more like and dodging people because they walk up to the cars while you're stopped. They just wander up and they're like, do you want this? Do you want this? And they reach inside the windows to give you things, and then they just stand there waiting for you to pay for them. And you're like, no, I don't want it. I really don't want it. Please walk away. But I mean, the beggars were in the streets. I don't think there's a picture in this slideshow, but there's a picture on somebody's Facebook. And it's this man pushing a man in a wheelchair. He has no legs. Actually, he had one leg. But he was just pushing him up and down the road in between cars, trying to beg for money. And it's raining, and we're like, all right, this guy needs to get out of the rain. And we turn around, and here's this guy running down the hill, pushing the wheelchair in between cars. And he just jumps on and rides the wheelchair down the road. And I'm like, that is terrifying. You really shouldn't be doing that. That's not good for that man. These are just some pictures of street life in Addis. Addis can be called a big city. It is a very big city for Ethiopia, but to us it's about the size of Atlanta in its size-wise, but in its development, it's more like Berea. Just laying that out there for you guys. Now, if you could see this picture in its bright color, this lady. Well, not in this Berea, but there's an airport in that Berea. You just walk through. They don't really care what you're carrying. In the normal light, you could see this lady. She's laying out things that look like potatoes or balls of dirt. I'm not really sure the difference. But right here is a child tied to her back with a bandana, like a scarf, and all you can see is his little feet sticking out at the bottom. Okay, Mom. There's its foot right there. and one's over on that side too. It's just laying on her back with the little scarf tied around it so it doesn't fall off. Now, I know that's difficult for you to see, Dr. Berry, but I'm going to have to move on. You can come look at it later. They have shoe shines. Just these people walk around with these little baskets for you to sit on, and water. It's not really shining fluid, it's water and a brush. But they shine shoes that have there's no reason for them to shine these shoes. They're sandals and flip-flops. They're like, oh, come, shine shoes. And I'm like, these are canvas. They don't get wet. They're like, oh, no, it's okay. And I'm like, I'm just going to have to walk away because obviously you're not understanding what I'm talking about. There are 3 kids. They're about, I'd say they were Josh's age. They're that young, and they just wander around this big city carrying things to sell and carrying things to wash shoes with. Brittany and I were talking about how in America we don't let our children outside of our house by themselves. They let them roam around the city, they let them roam around this giant countryside, and whether they come back or not, it's whatever. And thinking about it, I know this is going to sound strange. Mom had me on a leash when I was little, all right? Like a little pink overall thing with a leash attached to the back, all right? Yeah, my mom. These kids just wander around. They have no place to go, nothing to do. They just go. If you can see this little man right here, I guess you could call him a policeman. He's in blue camo. He's the reinforcement of the slightly communist government in Ethiopia. And these people just walk around with giant AKs, just, what up guys, I'm here to make sure you don't do anything wrong. And Julian took a picture of the palace where the leader lives, and we had to pull over, and he had to give his iPhone to this man in camo so he could delete the picture. And then this other man walked up, and he's carrying this machine gun, and he's angry that we've taken a picture of this place. He is livid. And so our driver gets out, and they're yelling at each other in Amharic or whatever. And Jonas gets back in the car, and we were like, what did they say? Because Julian got his phone back, and we just drove off, and Jonas goes, that was a very nice man. If they see you taking pictures of places you're not supposed to, you could die. Period. He would have shot us. That was terrifying. In fact, I'm not supposed to have this picture.
Were you worried about the doors?
I don't think they followed me. It's kind of hard to get out. But yeah, this is, he's got this giant camera videotaping cars go by, I guess. I don't know what he's doing. But he's outside the communist compound in the middle of the city. And I took that picture, and Jonas turned around to me, and he goes, no camera! And I was like, all right, I'm just going to hide that for a while. This man here, he's walking. He has, tell me if I say this, polio? Yeah, his legs do not work. So he's walking these streets of Addis with his arms. Now, I will never complain about American traffic ever again. 385 would have 8 cars side by side if we were in Addis, and they would be going in different directions. There are no lanes. There are no street signs. There are no stoplights. People go. There was this 4-way intersection, and I couldn't take any pictures because I was so terrified. I had my eyes closed. There's this car coming this way, and there's one going this way, and they just meet, and they sit there waiting for somebody to move. And I'm like, please, just get me out of the city. Just get me out of the city. But our driver is really awesome, and he made it through without freaking out, which is a lot more than what I could say. These are just houses. This is a building, what used to be a building. They plow the fields, and then they go back and they pick up all the rocks that were in the fields, and they build walls and structures out of them. They don't use them for their houses. They just build things with them, which is insane considering the amount of money we Americans pay to have our house get stucco that looks like rocks. And these people just pick it up and they just sit it places because they don't want it. This is a glorified bathroom spot. We couldn't make it all the way to Sherobit without having to go to the bathroom, so we all climbed out of the car in this man's field and went to the bathroom in this little building. They're on the way from Addis to Sherobit is 6 hours, and there are no towns. So you had the field. And once you drink a lot of water, you have to go to the bathroom. This place is absolutely amazing. It is gorgeous. I rode the same road for 6 days for an hour and a half both ways, and I saw something new every day. It was absolutely beautiful. There were mountains. Like, you'd ride along and you see all of these like fields and farmers, and all of a sudden there'd be like, poof, mountain out of nowhere. And you just have cows walking on the side of the road, camels, goats, sheep, people. It didn't even matter. They would just walk. And they had no other transportation. They just wandered around for, I don't even know, just because they wanted to. If you can't see it because it's not a very good light, but on that picture on my computer, there's a rainbow coming out of this mountain right there.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, well, ta-da, rainbow. That's a little like walkway in one of the villages we passed on the way to Sherobit. This might be my favorite place we stopped. It was just on the road to Sherobit. We just stopped, got out of the car, and you could walk to the edge, and there were 2 mountains that met, and then you could see the valley with everything in it. And it was absolutely gorgeous. Look, there's me up on top of this mountain. And right here is where I realized 6,000 feet above sea level, it's really hard to breathe. Because I'm climbing this mountain, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do it. I get halfway and I'm like, I really didn't think this through. I was like, I didn't think I was this bad out of shape. But then I remembered, I'm about 6,000 feet higher than I normally am, so the oxygen's a little bit thinner. That's what you could see from the top of the mountain, is all those houses. And I mean, you could see for miles. You could see mountains off in the distance, and I wish there was a camera that could take as good a picture as our eyes can see. But there's not. There's absolutely no way to describe this place. There are no words. There's no pictures I could have taken to show you. You just have to. You see it, and it's gorgeous. And there's nothing else you can do about it. You just stare at it. You're just like. This little boy right here, his name is Abraham, and he works in the hotel that we stayed at. It's more like a compound thing. That's where we slept. And hammocks. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had rooms. They got rooms for us. They had a nice bed and a chair and a table. And half of them had bathrooms and the other half didn't. But, we all brought our Enos, so we just slept outside under the little trees. This is inside the hotel. Right there is the door to the outside. Well, the back door to the outside where the road comes in so people can park their cars or whatever. And I loved sleeping out there because I was under the Africa stars. And Daddy was like, I told Daddy that, and he goes, Riley, they're the same stars. And I was like, no, they're not. Those are Africa stars. Don't crush my dreams. This is our typical breakfast, I guess you could say. There's most of our group. They brought us coffee, which they call buna, which When you are a guest in someone's house, it is their job to make coffee. And when I say make coffee, I don't mean they pop it in the little Keurig thing. They take the beans, roast them, grind them up, and then they put it in hot water, and then they make the coffee. I mean, that stuff was strong. It was good, but you didn't need more than one cup. And you're like, all right, let's go build a building. Yay! Woo! School time. This little girl right here, her name is Winchette. And she is absolutely gorgeous. And hopefully, she will be in America. Yes. Not me, but one of our group. There's a wife and a husband in our group who have been married for 6 years, and they've had troubles, and they haven't been able to have a child, and they've been praying about it. And John Davis, our pastor, prayed about it, and he gave him he read the scripture to him that said, "Your trials will bring glory to me, not to try things on your own." And we get there, and this little girl right here, she is absolutely the most precious thing you will ever meet in your entire life. Her mom is a cook for the hotel, so she lives and works in the hotel. She cleans. She's 12. I don't think she knows what a childhood is. She's cleaned and cooked all her life. Her mom is leaving in a month to go to Saudi Arabia for a better job. She's being left behind. Now, there's another girl who is older. Her name is Mulu, and she has been adopted, like Winchette will be, into the hotel family. Winchette has watched Mulu mature, and Mulu, to help cover some of the extra expenses, is a prostitute. And Winchette is absolutely terrified that's going to happen to her. She has watched it happen, and she does not want that to happen to her. And come to find out, her mom had been talking to one of the head translators for our group to see if one of the Ferengis, that's the white people, would adopt her. Now, we learned about Winchette Monday morning, and Brittany and Julian went back into their room, and Brittany said it was the most amazing thing. There were no questions asked. They didn't look at each other for a response. She said they both looked at each other and said, "She's ours." They both knew in their heart she was coming home. Now, Brittany is a dreamer, which she's the only one I've ever met, and it's fantastic to listen to her stories. But she's had several dreams, and things come to fruition after her dreams. And she's had this dream for several weeks before she came, and she's taking a little African child to the airport. And she had no idea what that meant until she met Winchette. And so I am so excited for her to come to America. Like, yes, Now, if you remember what Julian looked like, the little CrossFit man, this is Jonas. He is our driver. And the other drivers called him the fat man because he had this little belly. I mean, he wasn't fat. He was just he was larger than the rest of them. He might have been 200 pounds. So he's not fat, but we are driving the day before the day we were going to meet Dubino, which is a great story that I'll tell in a minute. We're driving, and we were in the lead, which was the first time ever, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, we're going to get there first, because we're always last, because Jonas is slow. And we have to pull off to the side of the road to wait on the other cars, because they were getting supplies and stuff. We had to wait for them to show up. And Jonas is eating these teeny tiny little barley seeds. I guess they kind of taste like popcorn if you chew them right. But if not, they just taste like seeds. So, yeah. So he's eating these things, and all of a sudden he reaches up and he hits his chest. And he reaches over across Brittany, who is a nurse, and grabs her water and starts trying to drink her water. And she looks over, and his face is blood red. And she looks at him, and he's just pounding on his chest, and she shoves him out of the car because he can't breathe. He's choking on these little barley seeds. And she said afterwards, she's worked as a nurse all her life, and she has never seen somebody get absolutely no air. There's always been some air going in. She said this one had none. And she gets out, and she looks at him, and she knows what's going to happen. And she turns around to Julian, her husband, who's in the back seat, and she goes, "Do something." And he was like, "Okay." Like, "All right, babe, thanks for throwing me out there." So he gets out. Julian's not a big guy, but he reaches around this man, and he lifts him up off the ground. Like, his feet come this far off the ground. Like, I was like, "Woo, go Julian," because I'm stuck here in the back of the car, and I can't get out. Like, Jalen and Kevin and I are all, like, freaking out because we can't get outside, and we're stuck inside the back of this car. And Brittany's standing there, and she looks at him, and she says, and she just kind of prays it. She says, "Lord Jesus, help us now." And he coughs up some of the barley seeds. And she gets mad because he's still choking it. She goes, "Lord Jesus, I said help us now." And all of a sudden, all of it comes out. And I was like, "Whoo, not going to get you to ask for anything from me." But it was so amazing watching her be so bold and to call on, because when you read the Bible, you know it says you can call on Jesus and he'll show up and he'll help, but you just accept it. Like, I just accepted it. It's just another part of the Bible. It's just, another story to read. Watching that happen, it's not just a story. It came to life. It was the realest thing I had seen on that whole trip for that part. Like, I was like, wow. Like, it completely lit up what I thought. Like I was just, the Bible's a good book, I believe it. I believe Jesus, died for my sins or whatever. Like, it's cool. And then watching him actually show up when he's asked to, that's phenomenal. There is nothing like it. And there's no experience like it ever. Here, this is outside our little hotel. They ride carts with donkeys / horses. They were tiny, so I'm not real sure which one they were. This is on the road to the village we were at. It's just mountains and dirt. And I wish this picture would show up better because it's really pretty, because it's all one color. And then she stands out in this little purple dress. Like, it's so cute. I don't know who she is, but it's a great picture. This is my mountain. I have claimed it. I took like 80 pictures of this one mountain. Because in the better picture, you can see there are different ridges, and you can see there's nothing breaking nature. There are no houses. There are no power lines. It is beautiful to think what we could see if we didn't have all these power lines in the way. And these people are happy without the power lines. They're fine. They don't miss it. They don't care. Camels. I probably shouldn't have taken this picture either, because if you take a picture of somebody's group of camels, you're taking pictures of their bank account, because camels are the most priceless animal they have, which I don't know why, because they stink. This is a picture of the school. Well, as much as they got work done on it, this is the progress it's made. We had planned on being able to finish it, but if we learned one thing while we were there, it was, if you make plans, be okay with God changing them. Because we'd get so upset because nothing went right, and we didn't get to talk to the people we wanted to, and the school didn't get finished like the way we wanted it. But when God steps in, he changes the challenges to blessings. And it turned out for the best part. Like, it turned much better than we thought it would. Children, those are just some of the little kids. You can't see this little tiny one right here, but he's wearing, and we dubbed him Little Obama, because he's wearing this shirt. It's just the change shirt with Obama's face on it. We're like, "What up, little Obama?" He's like, I don't know what I'm talking about here. I was teaching them how to high five because they don't know what high fives are, but I told them that's how we say hello. And they got excited. That's when you give a scarf to somebody, it's a present of friendship. It's not like, oh, hey, you're my friend. It's more like, it's like a covenant friendship. It's like these people, you would die for this person, which you have friends here in America and you're like, oh yeah, you're my friend, but if something were to happen, like, I'd be okay. Now, when you are a friend and you make a covenant with these people, they're willing to step in if somebody comes at you. They're willing to give you. In fact, Scott has a covenant with the leader of the village, and Hussein even offered him one of his wives because they can have up to 4. And Hussein was like, hey, if you want one, I got you. He's like, no, really, I'm good with my one. I don't really need any more. This is sunset coming back. There's another picture of the sunset. They were building bleachers/stairs on the side of the school, and this dirt is rock hard because it's so dry. The stuff, it's like 100 every day, and it's not like South Carolina heat. It's not like that humid, like sticky heat. It's more like that you sweat and it immediately goes away, so it does nothing for you. You're just sitting there like, I can't breathe. And to tell these kids we can't give them our water, and to tell them no when they ask for it, it hurt. So I eventually had to keep going, Ferengi wuha. No Ethiopian wuha, because wuha means water. And I was like, Ferengi wuha, Ferengi wuha. And I had this little girl named Hayat, and she'd repeat it back to me. She's like, Ferengi wuha. I'm like, yeah, you keep going with that. This is inside the church we went to on Sunday. It was a typical traditional Ethiopian church, which traditional isn't traditional. Traditional is, I can't even they sway and they clap and they randomly stand up by themselves. It's so fun to watch. And these are the little kids that lived across the street from us in the hotel. That's my Eno, and they thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen in their lives. So they liked to sit in it when I left it up, and we left for the day. There's my babies. Muhammad right here is the sweetest kid. He translated for us from the regional language to Amharic, and then Bakalu translated from Amharic to English for us. So when we talked to, there's another group of Ben and Mallory with the kids. When we talked to this one right here, his name is Dubino. And this one right here, he sits right here. This child right here has a mental handicap, and they treat him like dirt. He comes near their fences and they throw rocks at him. They beat him just because he can't communicate like the rest of them. The only place he's allowed is near the school, and even then he gets beat. So Maddie and the girls heard he was over at the school one day when we weren't there. And so we all pile into this one car, and we're all so excited, and we pull into the school compound. And I, fortunately, didn't get to see it. But somebody, as soon as we pull up, one of the older kids hauls off and pops Dubino in the face. And Maddie jumps out the back of the car. And she ran over there, and she pushed that kid away. And Dubino is in this defensive state, like he's hitting people because he just got hit. And when you get hit, you want to hit back. Even normal people do. But people with mental handicaps definitely, they don't understand. They want to strike back because that's what they're used to. And Maddie reaches over to him, and she pulls his face in her hands, and she just looks at him. And he goes from this defensive state, and he looks at Maddie, and he realizes that he's safe. And he melts. He completely falls into her arms. And they just stand there. And they just stand there hugging each other. And then we walk him over to the little stairs outside of the school building. We're sitting there talking to him, and Maddie has Bacalo tell the other kids that had crowded around that we love them just as much as we love Dubino, and that we didn't love Dubino more than them because, we don't want to show favoritism. And she said, you have to love Dubino like we love Dubino. She said, I'm tired of watching you be mean to him. You need to take care of him because he's one of you. And he lets off with this spiel of nonsense. And the kids are laughing at him, and we have no idea what he's saying. And Muhammad's translating for us. And then he says this statement. Now, this region is 99% Muslim. And he looks up at Maddie, and he says, the people who follow the traditions of this region are dead. Now, we kind of stared at him like, are you talking about, like, really dead? Are you going to kill people? Like, and she goes, Bacalo, what does he mean? And Bacalo goes, Maddie, if you think spiritually, what he just said is extremely deep. This kid is not stupid. This kid is smart, and these people treat him like dirt. We gave him our sandwiches, and he looked up at Maddie, and he said, the only time I eat is when you are here. To hear a child say they don't eat unless foreigners come feed him, that hurts. Now, as we were leaving, the kids start to chant, and we asked Bacalo, what are they saying? And he said, and he looks up and he has tears in his eyes. He said, they're saying, we love Dubino. We love Dubino. And I said it over and over and over again. To watch the love that we had come out and these kids follow that was amazing. So as we're leaving, Brittany pulls Muhammad aside, the little boy who was translating for us, and she tells him, she says, you're a leader, and you need to take care of Dubino. And he nods his head, and she says, you're strong, and I know the kids will follow you. And he nods his head, and she looks down, and she says, and I love you. And he looks up, and he gets this big smile on his face, and he hugs her. These kids don't know love, okay? They don't. And so when he hugged her, that showed he absolutely trusted her. Now, there's Maddie. Maddie's heart breaks for this boy. I mean, it is the most beautiful thing to watch. And I know that's terrible to say, I like to watch her cry. But when she does, you can see the love come out of her. There he is. He hugged me. And if you can't see, I'm glad, because I kind of look like I'm crying, because I was. But we get back to the girls' dorms where we had been earlier, and we're all coming out of the car, and the girls were like looking at us because we all been crying, you know. And they were like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And Calcadon had our girl translator had to explain what happened, so they were okay finally. And so we're sitting there eating lunch. And we see these two people walk across the desert towards us. And it's Dubino and Muhammad, arm in arm. And they're walking towards us, and he wants to climb up on this truck where the other kids are playing, and the kids run away, and Muhammad goes after them, and he starts talking. And then they come back, and they play with Dubino. And this one kid reaches out to hit Dubino, and Muhammad turns around and pops him and keeps him away so he doesn't hit him. Now, the fact that we got to change that we started to change the way these people look at him, I can't even explain how that makes my heart feel. Like it warms up. This is my little Hayat, and she is absolutely precious. This is Hamat. And Friday, the first Friday we were there, Maddie was explaining Jubino to us, and she started to cry. And I prayed right there. I said, God, I want you to show me something or somebody that breaks my heart like Maddie's does. I want my heart to break like yours does for these people. And there he is. We're sitting there Wednesday, which is the day before our last day, and we're sitting there, and Brittany and I are sitting on the stairs with all this group of kids around, and he walks up and he's talking to Brittany because he knows she's a nurse. And he says, I feel dizzy, I have pain all over my body, and I'm freezing. Which when you felt him, when you put your hand up to his forehead, you couldn't hold your hand there for more than 2 seconds. This kid was on fire. And Brittany's like, well, all I have is Tylenol and ibuprofen. Like, there's nothing, I don't even know what he has. And so we put wet paper towels on the back of his neck and on his forehead, and he's sitting there with me, and I look at him, I said, are you okay? And he made this gesture where he's going to throw up. So I helped him walk to where he could throw up without the kids watching him. And so he threw up, and then he came back, and he sat back down next to me. And he looked miserable. Like, he looked like, you could tell he was dying on the inside. You could tell something wasn't, like, we couldn't decide what it was until we brought him inside the room where we keep our stuff. It had a bed in it, and we made him lay down, and we started talking to him, and turns out he's 18, and he has a fiance, and she goes to school in Cherubit, and she's 15, which is normal, I guess, for them. But he has had malaria before. Now, once you have malaria, it doesn't go away. You always have malaria, and sometimes it just flares up. And we had to leave him, so that meant he had to come out of the room and back into the heat. And I could not stand watching this boy walk back outside. It hurt watching this one walk back outside, because I knew malaria. You don't survive malaria. He lives in a war-ridden country. He's 18. He will go to fight if he is called to. The valley in between the two regions at war with each other has 30,000 people dead in it because of the war. He would die. And I know where he would go. He would go to hell because he is not a Christian. And it tore my insides apart. So as we're leaving the village, I made Hannah promise. And I promised God, and I said, if the next time I see him, he is cured. There is nothing in this world that will stop me from sharing Jesus with him. Now, this people walk around with machetes and AKs in this village. These are Muslim people, and they don't appreciate it when people tell them that they're wrong. So this is a stupidly dangerous thing for me to do. But I didn't care. Because I knew that if God came through with his promise, then I would. I'd have to. So we go back, when we sleep, or we go to sleep, and we wake up, and everybody's woken up with this uneasiness feeling on the inside. Like they know something's going to happen, but they just don't know what. And the girls prayed together, and I told Maddie, and she threw her arms around my neck, and she said, Riley, I will be there. She said, I don't care what happens. She was like, I will be there with you. She's like, there's no way I'd let anything happen to you. And she said, honey, if he's cured by the time we're there, she was like, that's the Holy Spirit's work, and there's nothing that could stop it anyway. And I was like, all right. So by this time, I'm like freaking out, because I'm like, okay, all right. And I've actually never shared the gospel with anybody before. It was my first time. And I get there, and I see him as we drive into the village, and I'm like, and as soon as I saw him, I knew he was better. I felt it. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, my turn. Yay. So we all climb out of the cars, and he walks over there to talk to us, and he shakes hands with everybody, and he gets to me, and he shakes my hand, and he holds it, and he looks at me, and he pulls it up to his heart, and then he lets it go. And I was like, ooh, okay. And I was like, Cal, can you come over here and ask him if he feels better? Because she was our translator, and she asked him, and he said, yes, actually, I feel perfect. And I said, Cal, ask him if he went to the clinic like he promised me. And she did, and he said, yes, I went this morning before you got here. And he took a malaria test. Once you have malaria, you always have malaria. This boy right here is malaria-free. He no longer has malaria. And I was like, oh, well, there's my son. All right, so excited. And I was kind of freaking out because I'm like nervous, and I didn't get to talk to him then because we had to go talk to the older girls about female circumcision because that's a practice. And we had to explain that's the reason that AIDS spreads so fast. That's the reason that 80% of the women who are circumcised when they have their first child, they die. We had to give them all these statistics, otherwise they wouldn't change. And we'd been asked to give this lesson/session by the head of women's affairs for the region. And so we were given this 2-hour session. And I keep looking through the walls to make sure he doesn't leave because I know I have to talk to him. Because there was no way I was going to let myself leave and break that promise because I just saw him healed, and I know what could happen if I break the promise. So I walk out, and Maddie's like, we should probably tell Brett or Kevin or Scott, the guys in charge, that you're going to do this. So I tell them all, and Kevin's like, Riley, I'm proud of you, but sweetheart, do you understand how dangerous that is? He's like, I'm really worried about you. And I was like, I know. And Scott was like, why? Why this one? And I looked at him and I said, because I know where I'm going and I know where he's going, and I'd rather get to where I'm going sooner than have him go where he's going, period. And Kevin was like, well, I'm done arguing this fight, and just walked away. And so I'm sitting there with Scott later, and he looks at me and he goes, are you scared? And I went, well, yeah. But to be afraid is to doubt the power of God to save you. And he's like, Riley, I'm a Christian. You don't have to preach to me. And I was like, I don't even know where that came from. And he was like, all right, well, now I'm talking to the Holy Spirit, so I'm just going to stay over here. So he goes to ask Bakalu, our head guy translator, to see when would be a great time for me to talk to him, because if I talk to him around other people, it'll be bad because he won't listen and things might happen. So later, Scott walks back out of the room and he looks at me and he goes, well, that was really easy. And I said, what? And he said, Hamat works for Ghana, which is one of the other guys that came with us who is a contractor for the school site. And he said, we can get Ghana to tell him that there's something that he needs to do and share a bit, and he will ride back with us, and he'll stay with us. So you can talk to him there, so you don't have to worry about doing it here. Well, by this time, I'm ecstatic. I am absolutely excited. There's no more nervousness. I am just stoked to talk to this kid. And I don't even know what I'm going to say. And I don't plan it. And I was like, no, because if I plan it, then I know myself, and I'll think, hey, good job, self. You really rocked that one. But I was like, I can't let that happen because it's not going to be me. And I was like, I'm not going to plan. I'm not going to try to do anything. Just going to chill out and let God do his thing. And so we get back. He gets to ride with us, and our car was always jamming out to Christian music. And so we're singing these songs, and I was going to ask him if he knew what we were talking about, but the only translator in our car he's learning English, so he's not very good at it. So I was like, what, I'll just wait till we get back, and Bakalu's there, and he can help me. So we get back to the place, and I'm sitting down, and I go get my Bible out of my room, and I've got my journal, and I'm writing, and he asked me what I'm doing, and I was like, I'm writing. So I flipped it to the back page, and I had him, and we counted to 30, and he did the alphabet for me in English. And I taught him, I wrote down, I drew pictures, and he told me what they were, like ball, cat, tree, chair. He wrote his name for me in English and in Amharic, which is really cool to look at, but it makes no sense. And I pick up my Bible off the ground, and I said, do you know what this is? And he opened it, and he read it, and he was like, yeah, it says Holy Bible. And he said, I have one. Now, he's talking in Amharic, and there's a translator going on, so don't think that I'm just talking to him in English. And I was like, really? Why? And he said, one of Boleto, who is normally with us, or normally with the group that goes, who is in America right now, he said he gave it to him. And he'd read it once, maybe. Not all of it, just some of it. And he said the only difference he could find between the Bible and the Quran was that they believe that Jesus didn't die, that God prepared some other guy to die for them, so Jesus didn't die on the cross. And I was like, let me find you something. So I opened up my Bible to Matthew 27, just the part that talks about the crucifixion, and I read all the way to verse 54 where it says, the guard who was looking on said, surely he was the Son of God. And I was like, obviously, even the guy who killed him thinks that he's God. So, our Bible proves that, he is actually the Son of God. And at this moment, his brother walks up. Now, I've never seen his brother in my entire life. And his brother walks up, and they start talking. And Scott comes over, and he knows his brother, whose name is also Hamat. I guess they run out of names. But Hamat, the brother, is 17, and Hamat, the guy I'm talking to, this one, is 18. And Scott's talking to his brother, and his brother goes to school in Sherabit, and this one had called his brother to tell him that he was going to be in Sherabit, so he came to visit. His brother believes in Jesus Christ. That was an amazing, I'm like, yes. Because when they go back to the region, his brother has one exam left in school, and then he's going back. So he'll be there for any questions, for encouragement, so he won't be by himself, which made me feel a whole lot better. And so Scott and both Hamats, Kalkidan and Bukalu and I and Gana all went and sat at this little group away from everybody so we could talk without being disrupted. And I really wish I could tell you guys what I said, but I have no idea, because it didn't come from me. I don't know what I said. I do know that I went through Jesus' life, but I have no idea what I talked about. I do remember I told him that I had prayed for him, and he told me that as we left the village, he felt better. And I told him that I prayed for him, and I promised to God that I wasn't going to let him walk out of my life without talking to him about Jesus. And he grabbed my hand, and he pulled it up to his heart, and he told me he loved me. And he told me, thank you for being willing to share all this with him. And he would think about it, and he'd go back and he'd think about it. And Gana reaches over and he goes, stop. He goes, what's keeping you from accepting it right now? And he said, well, I have some questions. Now, these questions, these are questions that people who grew up in church struggle with, okay? These are deep questions. He looked at me and he said, if Jesus is God and he is man, if you say Jesus is God, how was he killed? But if he is man, how was he resurrected? And I was like, Scott, you want to help me with this? And he was like, sure. And Scott explained that's what makes Jesus so amazing. It's the fact that he's God, so he can save us. But he's also man, so he's relatable, so he knows what trials we've been through, what struggles and stuff. And the next question was, if Jesus is the Son of God, how is he God at the same time? Which is a Trinity question, which is a giant thing, a hard thing to explain. And so we eventually had to talk to him about, I said, well, your body has a hand, and your arm has a hand. So, but all of it is part of you. So each thing has different jobs, but they're all part of the same thing, which has a bigger job. And I hope that made sense to him. And it was kind of difficult to explain, but he told me he loved me, and that and Scott asked him if he saw anything different in me when the first time he met me. And he said, yes, I see it in all of you. He said, you people show love. You are willing to love us. And the people in our village don't. And I reached over and I grabbed him by the shoulders and I looked him in the eye and went, do you understand that the love you see in us is only a teeny tiny fraction of the love Jesus Christ has for you? And I hope, well, his brother was able to translate straight from English to the regional language for me. So he explained it to him, and he shook his head and he's like, well, that's crazy. That's a lot. And I was like, duh. I was like, he died for you. He loved the people who killed him. And he loves you. And so he told me, he promised me, he would tell Gana or Beleto, who can contact us, he would tell them his decision when he made it. So I haven't heard anything yet, but this one right here, this one holds my heart. Here's some more pictures of the school and the progress it's made. Now, I know it looks a lot smaller in pictures, but that's a pretty big building. There are like people standing in it, and it's quite larger than you think it is. There's the group that was leaving early. This is when I left. There were about 10, 12 of the other ones who stayed for 10 more days and went to Dilla, a southern city which had less persecution, so they street preached and built another building, and I don't know what else they did. But this is Kalkinen, the best girl translator we had. She's amazing. This is Teddy. He's one of the drivers, and we may or may not be married. I'm not sure. He would say things, and I'd be like, uh-huh, you crazy, and I just walk away. This is Bacalo. He's our head translator, and he's hilarious, but he's so full of the word. Like, he preached to us one night, and it was amazing. It was amazing. And there's all us girls, and there's a picture of our entire group. That's all 24, 22 of us that went. And that's all the pictures I have. And that's all my story. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Are you planning to go back?
Yes, I am planning to go back. And don't tell my mom that I'm planning on living there. Yeah, in the hammock.
So tell us about the International Mission Board's activity there.
None.
So there's
We never,
okay.
none that I know of.
Okay. Sounds to me like you lived Paul's expression, the love of Christ becomes strength. Yeah, that's right.
To watch, just to sit there and watch the other people and watch the love pour out of them, it was great. It was amazing. Goat? I ate goat. And it tasted like cows, except it was chewy. Chewy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some of the guys fixed the water pump, so the village had running water to its wells and stuff. And so we were presented with a goat, to which Randy had to ceremoniously slaughter, And then they cooked it for us, and we had to eat it before we could leave. Ew, it was delicious. It's kind of...
So that's their typical diet is goat?
Yes, everybody has goat. Chickens are more expensive, but I'd pay for a chicken. They also eat cat, so...
They eat cats?
Mm-hmm. I thought you'd appreciate that. There were showers in the hotel, but only half of the rooms had them. And when I say shower, I mean you could hook up a garden hose and get a better rinse off than the showers would give you. So, baby wipes all the way. Are there any other questions? Well, we do sponsor a kid from Ethiopia, and we've had him since sophomore year of high school. And I went to a conference in February with my school, and 3 of the 5 speakers had adopted children from Ethiopia. And there was a lady there who was working with the missions in Ethiopia, and I went to church one day, and they popped up Ethiopia mission meeting in the prayer room after church, and I was like, all right, let's go check this out. And the group had been twice before, so this was most of their 3rd time. So I felt safe with them. So
those were church members you were with, or college students?
One of them goes to CSU with me. One of them goes to College of Charleston, but the rest of them are church members. Well, all of them are church members, but those are the only 2 student-aged. Yeah, a bunch of them just graduated. There were some Navy people who went, but they were all church members. So.
What was the one thing you think that God opened your eyes to most?
Hope. They don't have any. They have none. There's no way for them to climb the ladder. There's no way for them to see anything better. They're just stuck with what they have. And Scott asked Hamad, since being a Muslim, he thinks good works help him get to heaven. He said, if there's a mountain and God is on top and you're down here trying to climb your way up, he said, if you die before you do enough good works, where do you go? And he said, well, then I guess I go to hell. And to live with that mindset that I'm going to hell, like there is no hope. And we got to show them that there was.
Good. On any previous trips, did they go to the same place?
Mm-hmm.
So they had met some of these same
Yes.
people?
Yes. In fact, Maddie got a friendship covenant with Medina, the head of Women's Affairs this time. And she got a new scarf and a skirt and a necklace. The necklace is really pretty, but it's a little tight and kind of hot, so she didn't wear it. Are there any other questions I could answer? And if you think of one later, you can come up and ask me. And I have a lot more stories, but, I ran out of time, so. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Oh, wait. Yeah, in Sherobit, they're Orthodox Christians. And in the village we went to, I think it was just his brother that I knew of. I think Kevin said there might be a total of 4 in a village of 500, maybe more.
Now, I was praying for a leader there.
Yes, his name is Hussein.
Name
And Hussein. And he actually, Hamad is his second in command. He wanders around him and does everything for him. So if Hamad, but Scott's actually had several conversations with Hussein, not talking directly about Jesus, but talking about, the differences between their beliefs and stuff like that. Yes. Hussein is the head of the village.
He's like the chief.
Yeah, chief of the tribe, whatever you want to call him.
Did you see any animism there, where they're like witch doctors, things like that?
Yes, there was one. This is a terrible thing to laugh at, but Tim, one of the guys who came with us, they were wrestling the last night, and his shoulder popped out of place. And he's had several surgeries on his shoulders. So they were worried about messing something up that had been fixed. And Brett and Derek, who are big Navy guys, tried to pop it back in, but they tried to pop it back in this way, which is, it won't go in that way. It has to pull down like this and then pop back in. But they didn't know that, and I didn't know that until she called her dad and was like, hey, my husband's arm popped out of place. Please help me. So I stopped freaking out. But they call in. He's sitting there in this chair, like with his shoulder down to about here, just sitting there. And he looks pretty chill because Tim's a chill guy. Like, he doesn't talk much. But, like, you could tell he was in massive amounts of pain. And Mama, the owner of the hotel, was like, well, I have a doctor out here. I'll go get him. And in comes this he had to be 80, this little old man. And he just comes walking in. And he goes, no, 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 no. And we're like, we know that's wrong. Can you help us fix it? And he's, And then Gana, who's a carpenter, started telling him what he probably should do. And Derek was like, when the carpenter tells the doctor what's right, we need to stop listening. So that's the only one I saw. But I didn't see any magical medications or anything. He just walked in and went, So, that's it.
Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
Give